Hello and welcome to Homemaking with Joy. I'm Rachel, and in today's video we are turning this cabbage into sauerkraut. I like to have sauerkraut on hand for its probiotic benefits. I also really like the taste of it. So I got this cabbage a while ago and it really needs processed. So I thought we would do it together today. First things first, I took off the outer leaves. They were kind of getting funky, so I did that already because we don't need those. Next, I'm going to chop it up. You have a couple options for this step. Some people like to use their food processor to shred it. Some people just like to use a knife and a cutting board. Some of it depends on how much cabbage you have to work with. Some of it depends on your preference of the finished product. So, of course, the food processor is faster. However, you get smaller pieces. I like to use a knife to cut it because the pieces of cabbage are larger and they don't get so mushy. When they start as a little bit bigger pieces, then they can hold more of their crunch through the fermentation process. Plus, I don't mind chopping, and I only have one head of cabbage to do today, so that's not that much work. Like I said, I took off the outer leaves. Some people save them and use them for weighing down the sauerkraut when you're done making it. But I'm not going to use that today. I'm going to use something else. I'll show you. Then we have the cabbage and we need to cut it into little strips. There are a couple of bad spots on mine that I will just cut off or pick out as I cut it. So here we go. There is a core inside the cabbage, like where the stem is. So you'll cut that out and just cut the rest into shreds. There's a spot I don't want to keep. I'll cut that out. This is the core part I'm not going to keep. This looks like a lot of cabbage, but it will not make that much sauerkraut. However, I'm the only one in my family that likes it, so this will be plenty for me. Next step. One of the cool things about making sauerkraut and fermenting cabbage is you don't actually have to make a separate brine. Usually when you ferment vegetables, you have a salt and water brine that you mix in with the vegetables to ferment it, but the cabbage makes its own brine. You just need some salt. So I have salt here. I did one head of cabbage, so I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of salt. Whoops. Sprinkle it on top. From here you have 2 options. You can start kneading it right away to draw the water out and to make the brine, or you can wait a little bit and let the salt do some of the work for you. I'm going to choose the second option. So the salt will naturally draw the moisture out of the cabbage and get the process started for me. It should be a little bit softer when I come back in maybe 10 minutes. There are some other things that I can do while my kids have their quiet time. So I'm going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. I mix the salt in there so that can start softening, pulling out that brine, and then I'll come back and massage it or knead it until I have a full brine and I'm ready to pack a jar full of cabbage that will turn into sauerkraut. My cabbage has been sitting for about 10 minutes. I can see that it's getting glossy, so I'm going to pull you in a little bit closer and show you how I knead it to get all the water out and make a brine. Here's my bowl. You can see how big I left my pieces. That works for me. You can also see I left some chunks together. I didn't bother taking things apart while I was putting it in my bowl because I knew I'd be doing this process. I did just wash my hands also. So basically just squeeze it and push on it, which feels a little bit ridiculous at first, I'm not gonna lie. Like you're just crunching cabbage. But the longer you knead it and work it, there will be water and brine that comes out. Perhaps I'll speed up this process. I think we are finished with the kneading process. It's wet and limp. I have brine in the bottom, and I think that will be enough. So next step is to grab a jar in which it will ferment. Now that my cabbage is finished, I need a jar to put it in so it can ferment. Depending on how much cabbage you have, you can use a half-gallon mason jar or a quart-sized mason jar. I think I can fit all of this into the quart-sized mason jar, so I'm going to try that first. Also, a little behind the scenes, this does get your hand quite messy from all of the kneading and stuff, so it's been super fun having to adjust my camera and get different angles and stuff one-handed. It's been funny. Too bad I didn't actually have a video of that, but you can use a jar funnel if you want. My hand fits just fine in a wide mouth jar, so it's fine. If you do a lot of this at once, just prepare for the whole process to be kind of messy and then just clean it all up afterward. Okay, so that looks full, but you gotta shove it in there. And that makes the brine level rise as well. Here, you see the brine rise up over here? Yep, plenty of brine. Keep going. Whoops. And I'm dropping it too. I think they make tools that you can use to pack these in here. I just use my hand. We are going super low tech today because it just needs done. A nice arm workout too, shoulder workout. All the pieces out of the bowl. You can still, I see, have plenty of liquid left in the bottom. Oh, quick tip. So I have done this before with a big plastic bowl that I have that fits it really well, but it was so not sturdy that every time I tried to push on it, the whole bowl moved. So if possible, grab yourself a sturdy bowl for kneading and doing this whole process. Okay, that's all my cabbage in. Let's push it down. So the most important thing is that the brine is above the sauerkraut, above the cabbage. I use those terms interchangeably, but this is still cabbage. It's not sauerkraut yet. Ooh. Okay. I'm going to pour carefully the rest of my brine on top. There we go. Again, a little bit messy, but roll with it. So I have enough brine to cover my cabbage, which is awesome. So from here, I'm going to ferment this on my countertop. You need to keep the cabbage below the brine level. If the cabbage is above the brine, if it's above the liquid, then it will get moldy, which you don't want. So a couple of options. You can use a fermentation weight. Some people will use a weight and then they'll grab, I mentioned these earlier, the outside leaves. They'll put an outside leaf on and then the fermentation weight to hold everything down below the brine. But I don't want to use these, and not everyone has a fermentation weight. So I'm going to do the plastic bag method. I don't know who showed me this, but I really like it. It's super simple. Also, side note, if you don't have enough brine, you can knead it more or just put some filtered water on top. But this might actually be too big. Let me just explain it in case this works for you. Like if I had this much sauerkraut in this jar, I'd definitely use this method. So let me just demonstrate on this jar actually. So you'd have your cabbage in here with the brine, and you'd want to make sure it's below the brine level. So you stick your bag in your jar. You stick the bag in the jar, and then you have some water, and you fill up the bag until this is pushing the cabbage below the brine. I keep wanting to say sauerkraut. It's not sauerkraut yet. So then you can adjust this bag, fill it up as much as you need to, and push it down in there so it keeps the cabbage below the brine. I like this method because everybody has a bag, everybody has water, and it's really easy to make it customizable. Like you can fill this bag up the whole way and push everything down. For mine, I didn't anticipate this being tricky on camera. I do have a fermentation weight, so I think I'm just going to do the weight on top of here. Because it is so close to the top, my weight fits just inside a wide mouth jar. So I'm just going to sit this on top and it should keep everything under there. But I don't have the weight. Let me go get it. Here's my fermentation weight. It's just glass, just a big thing of glass. I'm going to sit this on top. Just squirted brine all over myself. Okay, told you it was messy. That's all right. Oh, I'm gonna smell like cabbage today. So, I don't know if you can see this. Let me switch the camera around so I can show you what I'm working with. Here's my quart jar of sauerkraut. Whoa, that is super close to the top, which is why it squirted out and why my fermentation weight works perfectly for this application instead of the plastic bag method, which would work well for a larger jar or a larger space at the top. But I pretty much maxed out this jar. So there's my cabbage, my brine at the top, and my weight at the very, very top. So from here, you have your cabbage, you have your brine, you have it weighted down, however you're going to do that. Now you need a lid. So you can use a regular flat and a ring that comes with most mason jars. I have these plastic reusable ones that I'm going to put on. The most important thing is you don't screw it on tightly. Don't do that. The fermentation will bubble up and it'll cause pressure and then it won't be good. So I'm going to slide this on. See how loose it is? We need airflow so it can ferment. So a little loose, it's right on there. But it makes sure that nothing gets in it. I'm going to grab a plate to put underneath and go sit it on my counter. The plate is because as it ferments, the cabbage will condense in there and you'll have a little bit more brine, especially because mine is so close to the top, it will probably overflow at some point. I will also burp it occasionally. So that's when you go in and you push the weight or whatever you have down to make sure everything is below the brine, pushing any air bubbles out and helping it ferment along the way. I like to ferment my sauerkraut for 3 weeks. I think most people like it anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks. I like the extra tangy flavor of 3 weeks, and of course it's boosted probiotics the longer it ferments. So I'm going to set this little one out on my counter, and I will keep you updated as I burp it and take care of it and show you how it changes color and all that stuff, because it's pretty green right now. I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera, but it will turn more yellow, and eventually you will get that sauerkraut smell, and then you'll know that it's ready. So I can't pass the smell along to you through the camera, but if you make it yourself, you will absolutely know when you reach that stage. It's time to ferment. See you next time. Hello, I'm coming to you 2 days after I started my cabbage sauerkraut. Please forgive the dishwasher noise. It's evening, so I am getting that running. Back over here, you can see all of the liquid that has come out of the top. It's almost overflowing my plate. So I'm gonna have to drain that. Up here to the lid, let's see what we have inside. Got some funky stuff happening on top. Oh, can you see the bubbles coming up the side? It's fermenting. So with that stuff on top, like I said before, if anything is above the brine level, it can get moldy. So I'm going to take my fermentation weight out, clean it off, and I'll get it back in there. I'll show you how I burp it and then get the lid back on. Be right back. Okay, I just rinsed this and wiped it off. It's good to go. Cleaned out my lid. I wiped off the rim and I got myself a new plate. Now let's look inside. Can you see how the sauerkraut at the top, cabbage rather, is not under the brine? That's a problem. That's the purpose of this. So, plop, I'm gonna burp it. I'm gonna push on it and you'll see some bubbles come up the side here, and it's pushing all of the air out of the jar so it can continue to ferment. Pushing pretty hard. I want it all compacted in there, and I want that brine above my weight. If you are using the plastic bag version, you can just take your bag out. Oh, sorry for the shaky camera. Take your bag out and get a new one. Just wipe it off, whatever you need to do. If you think it looks yucky, just get a new bag. And if at any point you can't get enough brine above here, just add some filtered water in the top. That's totally fine. Okay, got brine all over my fingers. So it's compacted now. This is what I said when I mentioned that it looks like a lot of cabbage when you start, but it doesn't create all that much sauerkraut because of this fermentation process. It's getting packed in there. It's getting softer. This is a whole head of cabbage in 1 quart jar. So again, here's what the top looks like. Oops, sorry for the lighting. Here we go. So all of this is brine above my weight. That's much better. All the sauerkraut is underneath. Cabbage, sauerkraut, you know what I mean. It's under there so it won't get yucky. So put my lid back on, just loosely. We still need airflow, and then it'll sit there a bit longer. That was only 2 days, so I'll do this probably every other day until 3 weeks or so. So I intended to show you lots of burping and taking care of my sauerkraut as it fermented, but as it turns out, none of that happened. You can probably hear it. I have a stuffy nose and a sore throat. My kids are on day 11 of being sick. That included 6 straight days of fevers, so I literally have not touched this for at least 11 days because I was just trying to keep the children happy, not fussing with a fermenting vegetable. So we are just 2 days shy of 3 weeks of fermenting. Usually I like between the 2 and 3 week mark. This thing has been staring at me on the counter for days. It looks pretty bad. It'll turn out fine. I'll show you what I'm going to do with it to revive it, but I'm thinking maybe I should change the name of this video to Lazy Girl or Mom version, or this is not my top priority, how to make sauerkraut, because that's exactly what it is. So let me show you what we're working with here. Let me show you closer. This is what it looks like on my counter. Always put a plate under it because these juices come out and then they got nasty on the plate. In a perfect world, I would have changed out the plate and kept that clean, but again, I was taking care of my kids. Take the lid off. We got some, funky stuff hanging out here on the top. Again, had I been taking care of it, none of that would be there. But I think it'll still be fine. Even with my stuffy nose, I can smell that it smells like sauerkraut. Like it's definitely not cabbage anymore. So I'm gonna fish out my weight here, clean that off, and then just clean the rim. Because my now sauerkraut is all below the liquid line. It's all under that weight. I'm not concerned about anything funky being in the cabbage / sauerkraut. It's all on top. So if I just clean the top off, everything will be fine. I took the weight out and it automatically looks better. All of the gunky stuff that was on top was attached to the weight. So now I just have the sauerkraut there. I'm still gonna wipe off the rim with a clean cloth, and then I will show you the next step. Oh yeah, get rid of this nasty plate. Now that I've cleaned it up, this does not even look like the same jar of sauerkraut. So never fear, there are very few things that go completely wrong that you can't save. So here's what the top looks like. No funky stuff in there. It smells like sauerkraut. There's some liquid there at the bottom, which is good. That's the brine that it was sitting in. So I'm gonna fluff it with a fork. So like there's a big piece here. Let me get it. There's this big piece here. It's still crunchy, like when I put my fork into it. I like that better than it all becoming mush. So you saw in the beginning of the video when I left some of the pieces big. This is why. Let me see if I can get it. There. Yeah, it crunched. So now I'm gonna try it. Should taste like sauerkraut. A little bit salty, tangy. I just like the taste of sauerkraut. My family does not, hence why I only did 1 jar. In the past, I've done, I think it's maybe like 3 heads of cabbage into a half-gallon mason jar, and that works. It stays in the fridge a long time, but I'm the only one who eats it, so it does take quite a while to go through. But I am working on my gut health as much as possible, and I like the taste of sauerkraut. Sauerkraut has amazing probiotic benefits, completely natural. And how much did this head of lettuce cost me? I don't know, 65 cents or something? I don't know, per pound? I don't know. Super cheap, way less than any probiotic you will buy from anywhere else. So I'm going to now put a lid on this, clean lid, stick it in my fridge, and pull it out anytime I want some sauerkraut or some probiotics. So I'm thinking my goal will be to have just like a couple bites each meal to get that good probiotic stuff in my gut and help me digest my food, because that is something that my body struggles with sometimes. So that is the plan, and that's where I leave you. This is my super duper hands-off method for making sauerkraut. You should do it better than I did, but if nothing else, this shows you if you don't, it works out just fine. I have a jar of sauerkraut for very little money and just some time, and yeah, it literally just sat on the counter for weeks and I didn't touch it. Thankfully, it all worked out. My kids are getting healthier, you know, day 11, I should certainly hope so. And hopefully this will go away soon too. So next time I see you in a video, I'll have my normal voice back. Thank you for joining me and learning how to make sauerkraut the hands-off way, and I will see you in the next video.